Now we will be discussing the shareholders as the citizens of the corporation. In that we will first discuss about shareholders and their changing roles with respect to globalization. As discussed earlier, globalization is deterritorialization of social interactions and investments which are facilitated by technology and the political changes of taking, which has helped in easing how people connect with each other. When we are talking of the shareholders with respect to globalization, what we find, like in the with respect to globalization, shareholders have been able to invest directly in the shares overseas in the global organizations outside their own country. Also, they have invested indirectly by investing their money in a organization which is a domestic organization, but maybe sharing their services or selling their goods and services in a overseas country. The indirect effect is also prominently seen in case of shareholders of MNCs which are investing in foreign direct investments, and that's how their money is getting invested in organizations which are in the outside their own country. They can also directly invest in the international capital market by investing in funds which are directly used for businesses outside their domestic country. In these four ways, the shareholders, they can invest in businesses which are not restricted just to their own country, and they can invest in global financial markets. Global financial markets refer to all the physical and virtual markets where the financial titles, all sorts of financial titles in terms of shares, capitals, currency and other services like options are traded worldwide, maybe through 24 hours, and technology and the political development, technological development and political development have like facilitated this global financial market and facilitated the shareholders to invest in it. So, one market like it meant the global financial market arranged in such a way like it functions through 24 hours. It starts in London, moves through the through America, then through maybe Delhi, then Dubai, and then Frankfurt, and then the time it's just before 1 hour again when it's like the dealing starts in London. So, through it is active throughout the 24 hours, and the shareholders can move through this, have a look into these independent markets also, but and try to see how they are able to invest in it. The problems of the ethical issues of these are governance and control, mainly. Who is going to control and in what way? Who is going to control? Because with the deterritorialization, it's all the territories, zones of control have become relaxed. So who is going to maintain control over such a vast scenario is a big problem. Second is, this market depends mainly on speculations of how it is going to function, and these speculations may lead to unfair competitions and also the illegal transactions of money, and the developing countries may get affected by these type of transactions, where based on speculations maybe money is moved out of one country in expectation, like if invested in a other country where the profit is shown to be more, then there is more return, and in that way a major chunk of money moves out of one country, and this is illegal transactions. To put a check on this, there has been a lot of debates, and in this respect, one tax which is called the Tobin tax is discussed, which is tax to be put on all foreign financial transactions, foreign currency transactions. But again, ethical questions lies about the global enforcement of it and the benefit of this tax, based on does it put a check on the desirable and undesirable, can it discriminate between the desirable and the undesirable transactions. So this is a question of debate given rise to between like people belonging to the anti-globalization movements and globalization movements, with like no as such conclusion has been reached onto how to deal with these issues. Another important problem of this globalization and shareholders is to deal with the global terrorism and money laundering from one country to another. To have a check on this, it is very important to know your customers. It is very important to see like the criminals are not holding key positions in the bank, to have a proper check on the employee backgrounds. But this may again fall in the domain of ethical issues with respect to human resource management, so it has to be done very carefully. And any unusual or suspicious transactions have to be noted and reported properly, and there has to be proper training of the regulators and the staffs to smell about, to be aware about these illegal transactions happening. And then we may to certain extent put a check on this money laundering and the global terrorism. Next, we'll move on to understanding shareholders as the citizens of a corporation. In this, we are going to discuss on the shareholder democracy. When you're talking of shareholder democracy, we understand democracy means the power of the shareholders, the entitlement of the shareholders to participate in corporate decisions and to have a say in corporate decisions. And it is based on the legal claim rights based on the property rights. Legal claim based on property rights. But again, question lies, can shareholders be a force for wider social accountability and performance of the organization? Regarding this, three issues need to be considered. First is the scope of activities, second is the adequate information, and third is the mechanism for change. When we are discussing the scope of activities means the shareholders must be having information about the whole range of activities the organization is getting involved in. Then only they can try to find out whether the organization is maintaining the role of their social accountability or not. If they are not aware of the different activities the organization is involved in, then they are not in a position to judge it. So, and in that scope of activities also, so the organization has to acknowledge its accountability to the shareholders. And in this accountability, we understand they are accountable to the shareholders not only for their financial performance but also for performance in other areas with respect to other stakeholders. Only when the corporate acknowledges their accountability to all the shareholders for all the activities they are involved in, not only accountability for only the financial accountability, financial performance, then only we can see that the shareholders can have a say regarding the wider social accountability, and they can be a force for wider social accountability of the organization. Next, when it comes to, in order to do this, shareholders must be having adequate information about what the organization is doing, and the information asymmetry has to be less. For this, as we have discussed earlier, shareholder participation, more programs to make shareholder aware of the functioning of the organization, entering into dialogue with the shareholders are very important steps taken by the organization to share adequate information with the shareholders. So, adequate information in terms of getting involved in the social accounting process, where the organization enters into a dialogue with the shareholders to understand their expectations from the organization, what they want to see and how they want the organization to perform with respect to the social accountability. The third is the mechanism for change. Shareholders must be having certain mechanism to communicate about their choices to the organization. So, if you have defined the scope of activities, if you have given adequate information also through like getting involved in the social accounting process, but there should also be certain mechanism for in the hands of the shareholders which they can use as a mechanism for bringing in change in the organization and communicate their ethical choices to the organization. So, that mechanism can be taken as ethical investment also, having some criteria of deciding I will be investing in this type of organization, I will not be investing in this type of organization, I will be investing in this organization only these criteria are followed or not. So, these can be a mechanism for the shareholders to exercise their choices to bring in some change in the way organization is functioning, and that is called ethical shareholding. There are two approaches to ethical shareholding. One is called stakeholder activism and the other is ethical investment. We will discuss these two in details. When you are talking of stakeholder activism, this is where the shareholder tries to invest in the organization to and invest in majority of the shares so that he or she gets a voice which the company is bound to hear, and that voice is bringing into focus, trying to make the organization aware of certain responsibilities like that they may not have performed well or taken care of. So, this is a single issue focus, and they generally speak about a single issue. Then the concern is more about the issue at hand to make the company hear what the shareholder wants to tell. It is direct confrontation with the organization to tell like this is what you have not done and maybe need to take care of, need to do it, and it seeks publicity so that everybody gets aware of it, and maybe this collects like intensity, moral intensity, and then the company is forced to notice this issue and take proper steps in solving it. Ethical investment, on the other hand, is not regarding a single issue focus, but it is regarding multiple issues concerned and with relevance to particular criteria which is there in the mind of the investor, and it has a financial interest definitely because it is investing in companies which is following these ethical principles. It seeks engagement with a particular organization who is following the ethical standards as per the expectations of the investor or as shown by the market, like yes, this is an ethical company, and it avoids publicity. So, these are two ways of approaches of ethical shareholding. As we see, shareholder activism is buying of the share of the company for the right to speak at the annual general meeting. There is a possibility of broad media attention by disrupting the meeting. So, voice concern and challenge the company on allegedly unethical practices, and the issue is as if it is getting involved with the enemy, and it is only an option which is there for reasonably wealthy individuals to get involved in this type of activity. What we talk of socially responsible investment is the use of ethical, social and environmental criteria in the selection and management of investment portfolios, generally consisting of company shares. So, as we are discussing, in ethical investment, there could be certain positive criteria which is there in the mind of the person who is making the investment, and certain negative criteria like if these things are present, I am not going to invest in. So, let us have a look into this positive and the negative criteria. Negative criteria could be like alcoholic beverages production and retail, animal rights violation, child labor, companies producing or trading with oppressive regimes, environmentally hazardous products, genetic engineering, nuclear power, poor employment practices, pornography, tobacco products, weapons, etc. Positive criteria could be conservation of environmental protection, equal opportunities and ethical employment practices, public transport, inner city renovation and community development programs, environmental performance and green technologies. So, you find like it is maybe dealing with the social rights, employment rights and the environmental issues. So, certain criteria which is there in the mind of the investor, like I will be investing for organizations who are working for these purposes or promoting these purposes, and will not be investing for companies who are either depleting the environmental resources, polluting the resources, or working against some of the working in some of the ways which are violating basic human rights or social rights. So, these are some of the criteria of positive and negative criteria for ethical investment by the organization. And we can see like some of the industries and top 10 stocks in the emerging market firms. However, the main concerns about these socially responsible investment movement is the quality of information. Most of the information are provided by the firms themselves, like we are doing this and this. It is a self-reporting, as we found in social accounting also. So, there is difficulty in verifying whether they are actually doing it or not. So, there are like whole set of criteria as mentioned in the last slide. So, which one to focus on, which is more important than the other? These are challenges for this ethical investment. So, it is too inclusive in the sense, like if you find like 90% of the Fortune 500 firms are held by at least one socially responsible investment fund. So, it shows like it is too inclusive in nature. So, and it is like in many cases strong emphasis on returns. What generally happens by the investment managers, like they may be selecting for the performance first, and then they are trying to track the ethical criteria, select based on the ethical criteria. And firms which take longer term perspectives and thus sacrificing the profitability are not like unlike, they are very unlikely to be included, because if the performance is selected as a criteria first, they don't get a chance of getting included when they are taking long term perspective and sacrificing short term profitability, because these firms don't get a chance of getting included in the screening. So that may be a the strong emphasis on return may lead to some dilemmas while we are discussing a like ethical investment. Next, we will be discussing on shareholding for sustainability.